You're listening to the Amplify podcast, where we discuss topics related to being a student at the University of Michigan. Hello, listeners. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Amplify podcast. Today, we're going to talk about classism within the University of Michigan and academia in general. Now, classism has impacted many of us during our transition to UMich and Ann Arbor. And in recent news of admission scandals at Stanford and elitism within academia has brought the issue to the forefront of all of our lives. While this episode's main focus is on class diversity, if you're interested in hearing students discuss cultural diversity, please check out our student panel discussing the topic on YouTube. It's the previous episode. It's really good. Today, we're joined by a student panel to discuss issues of classism during their transition into the UMich community, how to find support, and hopes for the future.
So hi, my name is Rachel. My pronouns are she, they. I am from Northville, Michigan, and I am a public health sciences major within the School of Public Health.
And hi everyone, my name is Evelyn Reyes, pronouns she, her, hers. I proudly hail from Fresno, California. I'm majoring in organizational studies with a double minor in business and community action in social change.
Hello everyone, my name is Esau. I'm from Chicago. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm studying sociology and social work within the College of LSA.
Hello all, my name is Dallas McGhee-Henry. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm in the College of LSA studying film, television, and media studies, born and raised in Detroit, but currently live in East Point.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah, and some of you may recognize Evelyn from our previous episode, so shout out to her for being on 2 panels in a row, and just thank you in general to all of our guests for being with us. So getting started, our first question to you all is, what was it like for you when you arrived in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan in general?
Yeah, so I moved out the second semester of my freshman year. So my first semester of I went to community college first. So my first semester I lived at home and it was really horrible. So then I moved out and I just remember being really kind of self-conscious of being at community college because I lived with Michigan students and I somehow felt that being at community college was like embarrassing, that they were kind of like judging me or something, or that like, because I would go to the library and study with them and like I was sitting there like, I feel like I'm an imposter because, everybody's walking around and I was like, you can't tell what anybody's thinking. You can't tell what, is going on in their head. But I perceive myself as like on a lower level than them because I went to community, which was ridiculous. As soon as I got in here, I'm like, wait, everybody like that, that was like a lie. Everybody's like exactly the same as me. But yeah, I mean, it was just, I just felt kind of, it was like a little bit of a culture shock too. Like everything was so expensive, like all the downtown shops, like if I wanted to go in and get something, I remember like I saw this super cute mug over by like I think it's like the arcade on State Street, and it was $36. This mug was $36 and I was just kind of like, and it's the same thing in every little one of those stores, like you pick up anything and it's super overpriced, and every little restaurant, it's like, and I worked at Pizza House, so like it's just pizza. The food is really not that good, but it was so expensive even with like the employee discount. And I was just shocked because I didn't come from like a super low income area. Like North was actually pretty wealthy. So I was like confused, because it's like, I think these two areas are pretty similar, and I guess socioeconomic background and everything, but the prices for Ann Arbor were just super, super, super inflated. And it didn't make sense to me as like a college town that it would be that way.
I think the feeling that I had was like the feeling of worry when first coming to Ann Arbor or just Michigan in general, because I literally had never stepped foot in the state or in the town. I've basically only ever been in Chicago. And so me being here in it's a majority white town. Chicago is kind of diverse, but depends on which area. So I came from a majority Latinx area. So very different from what I was used to. And slowly but surely, my worries started to fade away as soon as I got here because I was in the summer bridge program. Summer bridge program brings a lot of like diverse students on campus before their first fall semester, and there I got to meet like a lot of Chicago students that were students from Chicago, and me bonding with them was like, okay, I can find my community here as well because I know what they know. I know they've had the similar experiences as I. um, but I was still kind of feeling worried because I would identify myself as an introvert, so I don't really like a lot of like social interactions. Like for me, I like to stay inside my room and just like watch Netflix or anime or anything like that. So it's like I'm gonna have to really try hard to find my community here because I don't. It's very hard for me to like initiate friendships. They have to come up a little bit more passive, but yeah, my general thing was that I was worried coming here at first.
Yeah, and I would share similar sentiments as Esau. So, as I previously mentioned in the diversity episode, I didn't really have money to fly out from California to Michigan to visit the school. So, had to rely on the best next thing, the internet. So, YouTube definitely got me through a lot of gave me information about what campus would look like, but it was definitely different once I got here. But my experience when I first arrived, it was also through the summer bridge program. And I moved in by myself. So it was just my 50-pound suitcase and me against the world because my parents couldn't really fly out and also help me move in. So I would say as a low income out-of-state student, it was tough, moving everything in and seeing everyone getting dropped off by their parents and some people bringing a lot of stuff, other people very little. But I also think it was just a humbling experience. I definitely met some of my closest friends through summer bridge. My roommate Rima was actually my first friend at Michigan, and she definitely gave me a warm welcome to summer bridge. But yeah, similar to what Esau shared, I didn't really realize what I was getting myself into until at summer bridge they were oh, this group is as diverse as it gets, whether that's racially and ethnically, but also in terms of socioeconomic status. So sometimes I think back and I do sometimes feel out of place because I'm Latina, but I feel even more so just because I'm low income at the school is what makes me feel out of place. But yeah, I definitely was able to find community, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, that was my experience.
For me, my experience was kind of, I don't know, it was weird because it wasn't my first time in Ann Arbor. I used to come to the Ann Arbor Film Festivals a few times, which is right on the campus, right at the Michigan Theater. So I always liked Ann Arbor from the times I actually came and visited it. But when I actually got accepted to the university, I was like, oh, sweet, this is kind of cool. I'm actually going to be going to school down in Ann Arbor. So I was pretty excited. And I don't think, actually, I'm pretty sure I underestimated everything that was going to happen as soon as I was going to actually get on campus. Because the first day of classes, I looked like a tourist. I always say just walking around, I've been here before. Why am I acting so new to certain things? But it was I stepped in a new world as soon as I got off the bus, because I was a commuter student my first semester, and I've actually only experienced the campus through that first semester because I transferred in during the COVID semester. So I was only there for 2.5 months. And that 2.5 months I was commuting on the Detroit connector to get back and forth from Ann Arbor to Detroit because I couldn't afford housing. And that's a giant conversation there, but it's just transferring it to the winter semester. I didn't even know how to even go about looking for housing. But then when I found out how to go about looking for housing, I didn't have the money to go into housing anyway. So I thought it was going to be more cost efficient if I was to commute from home, which in a sense it was just a hassle to just get up every morning at 6 o'clock to get to Midtown Detroit, just to get to Ann Arbor at 8:30 to make it to my 9 o'clock Greek class. So definitely took a toll on me after the first week. This is going to be my schedule for the next 14 weeks. And then even just if I had a late class and I had to, the bus ended at 5:30, and I had some labs that got out at 8. And some days I would come on the bus, but I have to like go back home on an Amtrak to take me back down to Midtown and just go home for Midtown. It was a hassle, but I had to do all of that because I just couldn't afford to live in Ann Arbor. It was definitely tough to be a commuter student, being a transfer student, and then just being a community college transfer at that, because I went to Oakland Community College, which was an amazing college. But I always say nothing in the world could have prepared me to go to experiencing a community college size campus to the University of Michigan, sitting in one of my first classes that had 100 students. I have never done that before. And I'm so big on sitting in the front of classes, even in like small settings, because I will get distracted by the back of people's heads if I sit in the back of classes. But I remember my first time I sat into my intro to film class, I sat in the front, and this was a giant lecture hall. And I was just looking at the front, but when the class started, I just turned around and just saw so many people, and just like, this is different. I'm in a different world, and I'm not used to this at all. Just all these people are now looking at the back of my head, and it was just, I got self-conscious, like people are just staring at the back of my head right now. But it was definitely a transition. It was a lot to get used to. Just sitting in all these classes with these students who've been here before, who've experienced university before, and people who could just wake up and just like walk to class, because that just was not my case.
Thank you guys. Now, one of the things I'm kind of picking up on is we kind of hear everybody's first experiences here in Ann Arbor. There's a lot of talk about apprehension and difficulties, like, or I guess worries is probably the better word, about paying for all the different components that go into being here. Now, my question, just if everyone could give a few words, do you think your experience with that fear of money and fear of, or your apprehension towards housing and paying for tuition and all that, do you think that's a trait shared by most people here at the university, or do you think that you are in the minority with those fears?
I can go ahead and open this up. I think we're in the minority. I see people who their parents are still paying for their housing. They live in nice high rises. They're talking about where their next vacation is going to be. I definitely think they don't have worries that a lot of us share here. So I would say, yeah, the minority.
I would definitely agree. I think, at least for me, it's like it's another labor that I have to do, that I have to figure out, that I have to think about. Just making sure I can afford like making sure that I can budget everything and like get the bare necessary, like food, water, all that stuff. And I think it's a labor that a lot of low SES students have to deal with, that a lot of people don't have to. Like when I heard that people were having their rent paid for by their parents, I was amazed. I was like, wow, that's such a blessing and a privilege to have that. Because for me, like I pay my own rent, so I have to make sure I have like housing, or I have the money to pay for housing every single month. So definitely I agree.
I would also say pretty much the minority. If the stat is I'm not in the minority, everyone else, they're like great at acting, because I feel like I don't know, I just have so many, I complain about money all the time, because I don't want to say money's one of my worries, but I don't have it. And just coming into situations, even just outside the university, I'm so Mr. Krabs about my money sometimes. Like I have to do this, and I gotta buy this, and this is on sale. Okay, I'll get the stuff on sale. Coupons? Oh man, I love coupons sometimes. I'm definitely gonna be that. I was gonna say older guy. I do it right now. But just even in like small communications on kind of the comparison of what other students have versus what I have, and how other students do what they do, and relying on their parents to do a lot of things. I come from a single parent household, and I'm not the only student that my mom has in college. So it's a lot of, I think, for myself, while my mom just handles a lot of what's going on in the house. So I definitely feel like I'm in the minority because I hear a lot of people who get things handed to them by their parents.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. This is actually why I brought this up, because like the community that I come from, like my family, in comparison to the rest of the state, we would be considered like above the average. And and so is everybody I went to high school with. And so many of those kids got into Michigan. And it's like Ann Arbor is kind of the same deal, where it's like most people that live in Ann Arbor are pretty wealthy, the kids from Ann Arbor public schools. But then I just remember we did a project for class once. We were looking at college admissions at Michigan from Ann Arbor versus Ypsilanti. And I think like 30 or like 30, it was just like, I can't remember the exact number, but in comparison to Ypsilanti, it was one student from Ypsilanti public schools that got into the University of Michigan, which was just insane to me, because it's like, it's right there, it is literally right next door. But it's just, and it's like, coming from me, who is, I guess, like in the average, I come here and I'm like, okay, well, this is supposed to be like the baseline, right? Like, I know where my family and like, where my community stands from. Like, I know like what we are compared to, I guess, just like the average. This is supposed to be affordable, but why does it seem expensive to me? Why, am I just remember, like we were just talking about the high rises. When I was looking for new housing, I called one of them because I wasn't sure how much it was. And they said it was like 1,600. And I was like, oh, okay. Like for, what, like the whole apartment? No, it was that much for half a room. For half a room, it was almost $2,000. And I was like, who is living here? But people are living there, so it's just like, clearly, somebody's able to afford this. But I was like, well, where are all you guys coming from? Because there's like at least like 6 of those, that I can think of, of those high rises. And it's just insane. And I know they're supposed to have like 1 or 2 like affordable units, but that's 1 or 2 out of the entire building, and that's still expensive. And it's just the median rent for Ann Arbor is insane, because my friends that went to Michigan State or like Western and Kalamazoo, their rent's like $300, $400. So it doesn't make any sense that the University of Michigan should be so much more compared to like those other schools.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to kind of, just jumping back on something that Dallas said, where he said, if I'm not in the minority, then everyone's doing a really good job at acting. I think it's important to point out that here at the University of Michigan, the median household income for students is around $154,000. That's according to a study done on tax records. I can link that study in the description in case you're interested. And just for context sake, in the state of Michigan, according to census data, the median household income is about $57,000. So it's almost 3 times that of what the median income is here. So in a lot of ways, people who find themselves with economic, I guess, struggles, for lack of a better term, do end up in the minority and do kind of have a lot of their experiences kind of overshadowed by kind of like the larger, like, I guess, spending culture that does go on here at UMich. But thank you guys for kind of touching on that, because I think having that come from like you coming from the actual students who are dealing with that is super important. And kind of that actually segues us into our next question about how do you guys feel your class or your socioeconomic status impacts the way you interact with the campus and the way you interact with your peers on campus?
So for me, kind of just going back to the way I transitioned into the university, I worked at my community college as a work study student. So once I left my community college, so did my job. So my first semester I was there at the University of Michigan, I was pretty broke, and like more broke than I should have been because I didn't have a job. So in terms of like interaction, because of where I was socioeconomically, it was kind of small, because a lot of what I was doing was looking for a job and trying to work, because once again, I had to afford my transportation back and forth to school. That was one of my biggest concerns through the whole semester, was how am I going to afford to get back and forth to school? I rarely did any other kind of like social events on campus. Well, I did like a few transfer events that fit into my schedule, but a lot of it was just get your homework done and then try to hustle some money to get back and forth to school, which definitely played a part down the line, because I didn't know anyone. And a lot of it was because I wasn't putting myself out there to meet people, because I had different worries in my head that were just kind of controlling my thoughts and controlling a lot of my actions. Which now down the line, I say was definitely impacting me a lot, because I still feel like, even though I have met a lot of people through the Zoom world, I still haven't met a lot of people. So it really, my money situation coming to school really detracted me from even making certain conversations, because I felt like I couldn't keep up with what was going on anyway, with just the other students and the student life at the school.
I think for me, my like low socioeconomic status kind of dictates who I interact with the most, because I don't have to explain why I do things to people, because like they already know, like we know we're not like wealthy, or we're working class, so we know certain things and why we do those certain things, and I don't have to explain myself on why I have to do specific actions. And so most of the people that I know here are low SES, and most of my friends are low SES. So like it's kind of eases my anxiety and made my transition here a lot better, just because I got to know them more. Um, and it just calms me down a little bit, because like I don't have to just do extra labor that I don't have to worry about. Like if I were to interact with a lot of like wealthier students, I don't know. I don't know how I would kind of relate to them as much as I relate to my fellow like working class peers. Like I don't know. It'd be kind of hard, but although I think it does limit me to the people that I do know, because since there's like we're in the minority, like I know a chunk of the minority, but I don't know the majority of these students because of how like wealthy they are. But overall, I do think like my class or socioeconomic status just dictates who I talk to and who I interact with the most, because we relate to each other's experiences, and it's way easier way easier to talk with people that have similar experiences.
Yeah, I would continue saying like it does create an isolating experience, again, if you are the low SES side of things. I remember being in a class and they asked us like, oh, like, why did you come to college? You know, this, it's like, why are they even asking? But a lot of people were sharing like, oh, I came for the experience to find myself. And I think I just thought that was crazy, because like so many of us are coming over here to college that are either first generation or like low SES, and like we're trying to build generational wealth. Like we're on this whole journey to like support our whole community, and there's like just so many people counting on us, that coming to college isn't even just about yourself. It's like, yeah, like breaking the cycle of poverty. So when it comes to like hearing responses of like, oh, I'm just like here for the experience, I just think that's wild. That doesn't necessarily mean like I don't necessarily partake in like what some of those experiences are, like study abroad. Like I for sure have gotten support to like do those types of things, but that's not the like main reason I'm here. But yeah, I think sometimes it's just a little frustrating. For example, when I see people walking around with like Canada Goose jackets, and I'm like, they're literally wearing my loans. So it's just insane to me, like how much wealth some people have. Yeah, that's really all I have to say.
And that's a great point, Evelyn, because I was actually just reading an article about how, you know, that those reasons that you were talking about, like why did you come to college, like independent versus interdependent reasons are kind of looked down upon by admissions officers when they say, why do you want to come here? And for people who aren't low SES, they're like, well, I want to find myself, I want to grow as a person. But people who are going to college for their future financial security, they're more likely to say that, or they want to help their families after college or something like that. But that is seen as somehow like a less, like, not as good of a reason as personal growth, but that's such a a lie because literally everybody is going, I mean, I shouldn't say everybody, I'm sure there are people that genuinely go to college to learn, but mostly everyone I know, no matter what background they're from, they're going to college because they think it's what they have to do, to like succeed in society, to get a job, you have to get a degree. And that's kind of, I think, just what like the norm is you go to college to get a job. But obviously that's not the reality. I think everybody's just lying on their admissions essays if they're saying they want anything other than that. But to be able to say that I want to come here to experience personal growth, it's really just kind of like a privilege, but that's again somehow perceived as more or like better, or I guess what was I saying, just like a better reason. It's just perceived better by the people who are letting people into the school, which is ridiculous. But to answer the actual question, how do I feel my classes and affected me interacting with other people? I haven't really had the chance to interact with anybody, because of Zoom. So I was just kind of in my house like the whole time that I was on campus. I was with my roommates, which was cool because but they were mostly grad students. So I wasn't really interacting with anybody, but I am very conscious of the fact that the community I came from, although everybody was kind of on the same level there, we are very much like in a bubble, like kind of the suburbs of Detroit. The whole, like, every town around me is kind of like a red line sundown town thing. So it's like a whole lot of generational like wealth that isn't the norm, but like it seemed like it was. But I'm aware of that now, so I try to not, I just don't discuss it. I don't ask what anybody's parents do. I don't ask where they came from. I don't ask what they're doing here. But yeah, it's I just don't bring it up because I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I really appreciate everything everybody's been talking about. I just want to add some points to that. I also feel like the fact that we have to work while we're in college, and not like just for college, just for like work experience, but like because we actually need to work to be able to pay for like our food and our bills and things like that, because our parents aren't maybe, helping us. And I think when I was at community college, I worked full time actually and went to class in the evenings. And so I went part-time, which is why it took me 4 years to finish community college, which to some people, who maybe don't have the same experience as me, think like, why would you have to go for that long? And it's like, because that's how I could afford it. Because I was paying out of pocket. Later on I ended up getting, better scholarships and whatnot, but at least the first 2 years of community college, I paid completely with my own money, and then had to pay, all my bills. I didn't live at home. And so those costs really add up. And I think now that I'm at U of M and I'm looking at like all this summer work and things like that, there are so many unpaid internships that I'm like, this is so unrealistic. These opportunities, quote unquote, opportunities to work for free, are so geared towards people with more income and whose parents are paying, because they can just be like, oh, well, all my stuff is already getting paid for. I can afford to work for free, so that I can gain these experiences. Meanwhile, people like us are like, that sounds like a great experience. That's something I'd love to do, but I can't do it for free. Like I have to spend my time making actual money if I want to like survive. And I think that's been a big point of stress for me, moving to Ann Arbor. Furthermore, I think that the fact that we're going to college alongside the children of lawyers and doctors and executives and CEOs and politicians, makes it really hard to feel like I belong. And I know that helps, or that certainly is the way a lot of others like us feel. My my mom was a cleaning lady at Holiday Inn, and my dad worked at Burger King when I was a baby. And even now, my dad works third shift in a factory, and my mom's unemployed. Like, it's and I'm going to class alongside people like Sasha Obama. Okay, and like, no, that's amazing to me. Don't get me wrong, that's amazing to me, because on one hand, I'm like, I can't believe I even get to exist in the same realm as somebody who is the president, or like the daughter of a president. That's like unbelievable to me. But at the same time, of course, I feel that, this reminder that like there are people here who have an experience or like the support and resources that I can't even possibly touch. And that can be really discouraging at times. And that also gives a lot of these students an academic advantage as well, because in a way they're able to focus on their school and classes and homework without these other thoughts. As Dallas said, you're not having to sit here thinking like, oh, how am I going to make enough money so that I can do this, so that I can do that. And yeah, so I feel like when I moved to Ann Arbor, my number one biggest concern and stress the year that I lived there before the pandemic was money. I was far more stressed out about money and paying my bills than I was about any classes. I did well in all of my classes. I was getting A's. That didn't compare to the amount of stress that I felt over how am I going to pay my extremely high Ann Arbor rent. And the fact that I have to deal with that, and so many of us have to deal with that, while other students are living in high rises that cost $2,000 a month. No, I'm not trying to hate on them. I'm just saying that there's a disparity there. And it can be really discouraging. And then finally, I also just wanted to touch on, I watched the documentary Operation Varsity Blues, it goes into the whole college scandals, the admission scandals that happened at Stanford. And that really drove home for me this idea that like, there are students who, I can't speak to what's going on behind the scenes at U of M, but there are students who have more money so that they can do better on their SATs, on their ACTs, who are getting private tutors throughout high school, who are able to get private lessons in sports, and so are able to get to a really high achieving level, to the point where they're getting scholarships for sports like crew and fencing, and maybe sports that like people like us never could have even afforded to play in the first place. And so yeah, watching that documentary, I recommend it. It really kind of draws attention to this like hierarchy and this elitism that exists within higher education that I think a lot of wealthier students just get to ignore. They just get to just be like, yeah, this is a thing, doesn't bother me. Meanwhile, we're down here thinking like, how can I get by? How can I make this work? And I think that's just a really frustrating part of this, but also I have hope that things are going to go in a better direction.
Yeah, and kind of just like highlighting a little bit of what June was saying and going back to some of Evelyn and Rachel's points. So I'm in the econ department here at UMich. I'm studying economics, and I'm thankful and privileged to come from a probably higher socioeconomic status than the median. But with that being said, being in the econ department is very interesting, because you're full of like half of it just like your average UMich student, and the other half are the sons and daughters of capital owners. And I think that's an important distinction to make there. Like there's different, like high socioeconomic status definitely gives you advantages, especially in this academic environment. But then when you're talking about being descendant from capital owning people, that's a whole new ball game. And so being around those types of people is like, wow. Like I am very cognizant of the fact that I'm thankful to not have to deal with a lot of the struggles that people who are my contemporaries who are coming from the community colleges I came from have to deal with. But talking to those guys, like, they're nice people, they mean well, but like, oh, they're different worlds, some of them. But I think to kind of say the quiet part out loud, touching on kind of, June, what you said about like, we go to school with Sasha Obama, and I think someone dropped in our chat here for the episode that Madonna's daughter came here too. I think, and this is not just a UMich problem, this is a problem with academia in general. Oftentimes, the message being sent to community college transfers or low-income students, especially those who need to qualify for, to use UMich's own programs, just for an example, people who need to qualify for the Go Blue guarantee. Oftentimes, the message that's kind of underpinned with that is, oh, aren't you so lucky? Aren't you so lucky to have the honor to come and study with the ruling class? To come and study alongside those who are going to shape society. You can, and hopefully some of that can brush off on you, but at the end of the day, you should be thankful, and you should have this sense of awe that kind of comes with that that golden ticket, so to speak. And I think that sort of mindset from an academic institution, and again, UMich is not the only one that does this. This is academia at large that has this problem. Having that kind of mindset definitely furthers that class divide, because in an ideal, perfect world, academia is supposed to be a place of peers coming together to just learn more shit at the end of the day. But that division there, that wedge of, these are people who are different than you. These are people who are above you, at least in this like class hierarchy way. That creates a lot of these systemic problems that we see, kind of going back to what Evelyn and Rachel were saying about like the difference between the people who are like, oh no, I'm trying to get some inherited wealth here that at least will start with me and maybe like trickle out to my family. The difference between starting from there versus starting from, oh yeah, my parents own X and Y company. And having kind of that elitism that kind of comes with that mentality, definitely I feel like puts a lot of incoming students who are trying to kind of undo a lot of that systemic poverty. It kind of does them a disservice, at least to have that mindset going into it from an academic perspective, or academic institutions perspective, I should say. Because it's not the fault, I don't think, at least, it's not the fault of the students themselves if that environment isn't fostered from the higher ups. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that, Elyas. So moving on, so we have all these problems, okay, obviously. But what is there on campus, to help? And it turns out there's actually a lot of different resources that are available. And so we're asking each of our panel members, what are different resources on campus that have been helpful in supporting you during your time here at U of M in regards to the issues that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so to kick this off, one of the like holy grails for me is a Google Doc resource called Being Not Rich at UMich. We'll link it below, but it's basically a document that guides you through, like, if you want a research position, like as a either first gen low SES student, like how do you do that? How do you start building those relationships? A lot of knowledge that you would have gained, like for example, if your parents had graduated from college. So I think it's really just an important guide to show you of like how to navigate the resources at Michigan, because I think there's so many, but a problem that exists is the University of Michigan is such a decentralized system where there's little pockets of like golden nuggets, but you don't really know about them unless someone tells you about them or like you get an email. But some of those pockets of nuggets, one that has supported me since the start has been CSP, the Comprehensive Studies Program. I've received free mentorship through there, extended advising appointments with an advisor who actually was low SES or graduated as a first-gen college student. So instead of like, I definitely feel more comfortable going and speaking with him, because if I tell him like, hey, you know, I had to pick up a third job, I know he's not just going to tell me, oh, just drop the jobs and focus on your studies, because he understands and like he's able to relate to those circumstances. And then another one I would like to highlight really briefly is the food stamps program. So since I receive work study, I am eligible for food stamps since I no longer live on campus technically. I'm in my own apartment now. That's definitely like something that has helped. Just like knowing that for sure I will have money to pay for my food and like that is covered takes a lot of stress off of my plate. And then lastly, I would just want to highlight the LSNA laptop loan program. When I was coming into college, I was nervous about, okay, I'm already taking out loans. Now I need to purchase an actual device, but the university like provided us with a brand new MacBook Air. And I don't know if it's just for our year, for the ongoing years as well, but we're able to keep it. But I think the program in general is you'll get a laptop loan for 4 years. And when you graduate, you have the option to either purchase it for the price that it is going at that point, or you can give it back.
For me, when I first got here, and it's also a resource that I still use, is the Opportunity Hub. I just was told by one of my professors one day when I was venting to her in her office about everything that was just going on. That was the first place she pointed me to, and I haven't retracted since. Well, I've slowed down since COVID a little bit, but I remember just making appointments to see them, and I feel like I've been there like 4 times, and that was just in that first 2.5 months that I was at the university. And they just point me to different opportunities at the university that can help me. For instance, I remember the first time I went was primarily just talking about funds and work study opportunities. And they helped me look for jobs and other type of resources that can fund me on campus. A lot of it was just work study that I was looking into. And I remember I had a meeting about scholarships because once again, can't afford school, but also I don't feel like I should have to pay for school. I don't feel like anyone should have to pay for school. So I'm so big on scholarships. So they pointed me in directions on how I can go and look for certain scholarships. But I say all this to say that they just helped me really like just point me in the right direction to, especially if they didn't know the answer, they will point me in the direction of someone who will know the answer. And that's probably just the main source that opened up so many doors at the university. It's the reason that I joined the Optimized community, because I got an email from Colleen Towler about Optimize and everything they stand for. It's the reason I was getting involved in things even remotely. Opportunity Hub, I'm going to just speak on them. Then also I was big on like a lot of things that would make certain things better for me always is just to talk about it. So I was at the CAPS office like every Thursday just to speak on things that are on my mind just for my mental health. And just the reassurance that everything that I'm feeling is completely normal, is completely valid. That really helped me out.
I think for me, the researchers that I liked the most was kind of similar to Evelyn's as well. CSP has been a really great program to kind of find, that was enabled me to find my own community. But I think from there, I would say other like low SES students that were upperclassmen also helped me a lot. I think during my freshman year, I adamantly like, I guess, sought out other upperclassmen that also had the same identities as me. And I like asked them questions like, what classes should I take? Or like, how do you save money on campus and stuff like that. So especially if any first years are listening right now, definitely like, seek out upperclassmen that have similar identities and ask them questions, just anything. I think they'd be more than willing to help. And then I guess if you ever meet me on campus next year, I'll be always willing to help anyone out here as well. But yeah, I think, those would be my the research that I think I would highlight as well.
I can't think of like a ton of resources right off the top of my head, just because like, I wasn't ever really on campus. I've literally never even been in the School of Public Health. But one thing I did want to say is that I applied to information. I applied to LSA and I applied to public health. I got in to all three, but I was admitted into LSA as a CSP participant. They wanted me to be in comprehensive studies, but I didn't go to LSA. And I somehow wasn't able to be, like, nothing else was said to me about it. And I was like, well, can I still do this? Like, I think this program could really help me, but I wasn't an LSA. So there was like nothing really there. And that was really confusing to me because, it's still the University of Michigan. Like, why am I not, being told about these things, or why am I being kind of like going through extra steps just because I'm not in the College of LSA? It didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, especially because everybody, like, cross campus transfers like into public health were in LSA first, so it doesn't make any sense that that program was just kind of shut off. But that's something that I'd really like to kind of like talk to the school about, is like, why is this smaller college not, giving like, because I know a lot of my classmates, because we talk about this all the time, like low SES is like, it's a huge thing, it affects people's health so much, like lifelong, low SES is really, really, it's just so much more like permeating in like every area of life than most people think. And that's what we talk about every day. But then, the students, they're kind of just like, I don't know, leaving us in the dust, which is confusing because you'd think that they, out of everybody would be on the most like on top of that. But I mean, it is a newer program.
Yeah, Rachel, it does seem like there are a lot of restrictions about like, oh, these programs are available but to LSA students, or these programs are available but you have to be in the School of Business, or and it's kind of strange like that. And so I would suggest to any of our listeners, going to advising when it comes to any of those things, just because it really does get kind of messy. And unfortunately, like, just you have to go and like talk to people sometimes and get it all figured out, and even they sometimes don't know what they're doing, so so good luck with that. But there are programs available per like the different colleges and stuff, so definitely look into that and talk to an advisor about it. But I wanted to highlight something that Dallas talked about. So there is free mental health counseling at U of M. And so I know for a lot of us, therapy and counseling and things has never been affordable in our entire lives. And coming to U of M might actually be an opportunity for you to, if you are interested in counseling or therapy, to receive that for free. There is sometimes some waits, but you can reach out to them and make appointments. Again, this is CAPS, and we will link that in the description below. So feel free to check that out if free mental health counseling is something you are interested in. That being said, a couple of resources that I wanted to bring up. For one, the Maize and Blue Cupboard, which is basically food and nutrition support. It's kind of like a food pantry, basically, for us college students. And I think that I've never been, but I did consider going in the spring of when the pandemic first hit. I was already financially stressed. And then when the pandemic hit, I lost my job. And I was straight up, I was freaking out. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And so I considered going. Luckily things, I got things all worked out. But I also wanted to talk about how there's a bit of a stigma, right? Because, it's called the Maize and Blue Cupboard, but it's kind of a food pantry. And there's this stigma of like, do I want to be seen having to use the food pantry on campus? Again, what if I just brush shoulders with Sasha Obama on my way to the food pantry? You know what I mean? It just feels like a little out of place. But I want to just say that you shouldn't be ashamed if you need to go get food, and it is there for that purpose. And so the food's not doing anybody any good sitting on them shelves. You know what I mean? So like go over there and get some food. I know that they also offer things like, I think once an academic semester or once a year, you can also like get pots and pans and other like cooking utensils and things like that there. So if those are things that you're concerned about, check it out. Maize and Blue Cupboard. Again, links in the description. Many of you, if you are from low SES, have probably heard of the Go Blue Guarantee, which basically means you have free tuition if you have a family income of 65K or lower. But again, only like 20% of U of M students actually qualify for that. The majority of University of Michigan students have household incomes of 150K or more, which again, just like the disparity there of like what the majority of students are living with, and then like what a lot of us are living like. I also want to second Evelyn's bringing up of the being not rich at UM. I actually discovered that resource by attending a Rainbow Coat panel, which it's put on by the Spectrum Center, and the Spectrum Center at U of M is especially like specializes in like LGBTQ plus advocacy and support for students that fall into those categories. And so I attended the Rainbow Coat panel, which was like first gen and low income queer and trans students talking about their experiences. And it was really enlightening. Definitely check out the Spectrum Center if that's something you're interested in, as well as like attend some of their events. I thought their panel was really great. But that's where I found this being not rich at UM Google Doc. And so we're going to link that as well. So feel free to check that out if you're listening.
And then for our final question, what advice would you have for students coming into the University of Michigan community towards financial stability and accessing resources?
I think one advice I could give, especially for introverts that have it like a hard time trying to establish like meaningful relationships, would be kind of join mentorship programs, because it's like somewhat mandatory that you have to meet with a person that you're like paired with. So like you have to meet with them no matter what, or unless you don't want to do the program anymore. But that's how I kind of created and established myself here at the university, by joining mentorship programs, by gaining the knowledge of other students and just other staff members as well. I think one of the most influential mentorship programs that I joined my first year was Success Connects. It's in the Office of Academic Multicultural Initiatives. And it's a whole program, like from your first year to your last year. They pair you up. First year is with a success coach. Second year is with a third or fourth year student. And then your third year, you get a graduate student partner, which is, graduate student studying advanced, doing advanced degrees. And your fourth year as well. But yeah, this program, I work there as well as a mentor. And that program really kind of enlightened me to connecting with other upperclassmen that I saw as like doing super duper well, because they were so connected with all parts of campus and they knew way more than me. And I just couldn't wait to ask them more questions and like see what they had for me, what advice they had for me. So definitely like, again, I said this before, but definitely like reach out to upperclassmen that have similar identities to you, because they've been here for like 2 or 3 years. They will know, specifically maybe a specific person that you should reach out to, like, because they probably connected with them before. But yeah, definitely, people will always be the greatest resource.
I guess I can second the mentorship thing program. The Spectrum Center does have program. They have two, where it's like one, you can get mentored by another student, and you can also apply to get mentored by like a university employee or faculty, which is pretty sick. And I think they also have support for students who live in university housing, but like it might not be safe to go home over the break. So that's there. But also I have a few tips for saving money, because I love saving money. But these work for everybody, but there are some people who, might be above the cutoff for like financial aid, but are still below, still can still, save some cash here and there. But Facebook Marketplace is amazing. I've gotten so much stuff for like $10, $5 for free even, because people just give stuff away. And especially in Ann Arbor, where it's like there are a good amount of people who just want to get rid of their things because they're moving, or maybe, they're just rich enough to where they don't care. They just want to get rid of stuff. And also Salvation Army is amazing. I have a pair of winter boots that I've worn for like 3 years now, and they were $3 and they're great. So I love that. And also Kroger grocery pick. I just struggle in the grocery store in general. But Kroger grocery store pickup like helps me avoid, because I don't know if you guys have ever gone to the grocery store and like you put a bunch of stuff in your cart and then you go and it's like it's way more money than you thought it would be. Because that's like, I don't like that. I really don't like not knowing how much I'm actually spending. So like to do that ahead of time is really helpful, because if you're spending, if you're over your budget, you can take stuff out without like feeling uncomfortable at the like till or whatever. And you can also, there's coupons that you can clip online. So yeah, there's that. And then, you can ride the bus for free. You can park at the bus things for free. Maize and Blue Cupboard. Also, I wanted to say, I talked to the Maize and Blue Cupboard for like a project a couple weeks ago. And they avoid the word pantry for a reason, because they don't want people to feel embarrassed about it. But what they said is, because they're like, I think one of our questions was, well, who counts, as food insecure? And they're like, there's a lot more people that are food insecure than you think. Like there are people who are food insecure that don't even know, that they count as food insecure. But they're like, if you're hungry, come in and get food, because even if like you don't, necessarily think you need it, in terms of like, oh, I could probably, afford to buy something, that helps normalize it for everybody else, just to have people coming in there, because it's there, even if you're making like, even if your parents are giving you money for groceries every week, it is still there for you to use, so it's like, it's there. People need to use it. Don't make it a weird thing. I just gotta, okay, I'm gonna stop talking about that one. But also Jimmy John's leftover bread is like 55 cents a loaf, and it's a huge baguette, and I ate that for days. They're delicious. I love Jimmy John's bread. And also they have like, their rewards program, so that's sick. Like, you buy a sandwich, like, and then you get like a free like cookie or pickle or chips or whatever. Utilize those rewards programs. And then, just a bunch of free crap from the university, like this I don't know what it was. I think it was that I went to, but I found out about it like on some website for the university, where they just had, and the union, it was like a huge room with just tables, like wall to wall of food, but like nobody was in there. And I purposely went towards the end of the night so like I could take the leftover stuff. And I left with a literal tote bag full of like granola bars, like cookies, apples, like water bottles. It was just so much stuff. And they had like deodorant and stuff there too, and like little shampoo samples. So that was really cool. But it's like, I guess my point is like, find the free stuff and take advantage of it, because a lot of people don't, and they're not going to care if you take more than like, what you think might be appropriate, because it's there for you to use. And that, also Trader Joe's has flowers for $4, and they're really beautiful and they're not expensive. So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, my advice would be ask questions and don't be afraid to ask for favors. I know there was moments where I needed either a ride to the airport, or I didn't know where to store my things after the semester was over. And literally all I had to do was ask someone, hey, can I leave my stuff in your apartment if like you're renewing your lease? And I definitely feel like other low SES students, or just like friends that you make, are gonna have your back. And like, if they can't help you, they'll find someone who can. And then also don't feel bad if you can't participate in things like buying a season pass for football or basketball. I know like sports is such a big part of the Michigan culture. But if you don't have money, like don't feel bad. But if you do want to spend money, also don't feel bad for spending it. Like I know sometimes a lot of low SES students feel like they're getting called out when they decide to spend their own money, and like all of a sudden they need to feel guilty for like wanting to treat themselves. So don't fall under that pressure. And then let's see, last but not least, continue to look for scholarships, I guess, outside of Michigan, even when you're in college. One that I have been reapplying to is called the Lanzata Scholarship, which is specifically for Latinx students that attend a college more than, I believe, 200 miles away from home. And it's through the Southwest Airlines and HACU. And they've actually been able to cover like my flights back home to California. And they've been doing that for 2 years now, and that for sure has been like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. So if you can look into opportunities like that, like don't stop yourself from applying for scholarships just because you're in college. But best of luck, you guys belong here. And as Esau mentioned, if you see us on campus, make sure to reach out and we'd love to connect.
My advice, it has to second a lot of what Evelyn just said, especially when it comes to scholarships. I feel like that's my new hustle. I fall into the bracket of the Go Blue guarantee. So my tuition, for the most part, is paid for. But tuition is just a part of the battle. So when you just sign up for these additional scholarships, since your tuition is paid for, a lot of it just get refunded back to you. And you put that on where you need to put it. But also to go back on a lot of what Rachel was saying, it is some things out here where you can just, I don't want to say get over on the system, but like so many people are not touching a lot of these things that it's just practically people are giving things to you. And you, I know like I've ran into a few in Ann Arbor, and like Rachel said, they're just empty sometimes. Like, why is no one, I guess it's like an embarrassment thing that you need help. But I like free 99, so I'm like, oh, let me get some of this. So I just do things shamelessly sometimes, but also like what Evelyn was just saying, you got to treat yourself. Also, don't feel bad that you wanted to do something. I mean, you're out here working just as much as, even more than some of these people. You can treat yourself every now and again to some things that you want, because you got that acceptance letter, you belong here, you can walk alongside Sasha Obama if you want to. But hey, she in here, you in here, you all belong here. So make it work the way you can make it work. But if you need help, definitely reach out and get some help.
Thank you guys so much for saying all that. I love it. I think it's really important for people to share some of this stuff, because while there are tons of resources on campus, it's like, where do you even start sometimes? And so I think getting some like direct advice is really helpful. So I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to follow up about that laptop loan program. If you're of low SES, it's very likely that the university emailed you about that, and maybe you were like, this doesn't sound right, this sounds like a scam. Because that's what I thought at first too. I was like, what are the strings attached to this, you know? But then I applied. I had been using like my $200 laptop, you know, that I had been getting from Amazon while I was at community college, you know, just like the cheapest laptops I could find, basically. Yeah, so I got the email about the laptop loan program and applied for it. Pretty much, if you qualify for financial aid, for the most part, you're probably going to be able to get one of these laptops. And again, that means you get to keep it for 4 years, or like while you're at the university, and then at the end of your time, you can either buy it or you can just return it, and then you don't have to pay any money. And I don't know when they started this or what years this applies for, but after my first year, they were like, nah, you can just keep it. So like, I don't ever have to give my laptop. I'm recording this podcast on a MacBook Air that the university gave me for free. So please look into that program and see if you qualify. Or like, you know, share that with people you think might need it, because having this like actually nice laptop that isn't just like a complete piece of shit that I bought off of Amazon has been so nice. I never would have bought a MacBook Air or like a MacBook at all, period, ever. Because shit's expensive. So yeah, check that out. It's not a scam. Okay, so I have verified that it is not a scam. All that being said, I really, really appreciate you all being here today. That's all the time we have for today. And so while this issue is really tough, we do have hope that higher education is going to become more inclusive and accessible going forward. I do want to give a special thanks to Rachel for suggesting this topic. And as a reminder to our listeners, please reach out to us with topics you'd like to know more about, or if you're interested in participating in an episode. because we love to hear from you. It literally makes my day when listeners email me and say, hey, I liked this episode. Here's an idea for an episode. Love to hear it. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And sincerely, thank you to each of our guests for joining us today and for sharing their experiences. All of the resources that we've talked about and more are in the YouTube description, so please check them out and share them with others who you think they might be helpful for. And that's a wrap on the first season of the Amplify podcast. So stay tuned for more in fall 2021 for episodes about Ann Arbor activities and favorite restaurants, study spots, extracurriculars, and more. Thank you so much for listening. The Amplify podcast is supported by Optimize, an organization here at U of M that empowers students to be creative in how we serve each other and our communities near and far. To learn more about Optimize programming, please visit optimizemi.org. If you have topics you would like to hear discussed, let us know at optimizemi@umich.edu. Thanks and be well.